Your leadership success is determined by how well you lead yourself first to then effectively influence people, organizational, and market results. To lead yourself well is to recognize that you exist in a 360 reality where you absolutely must prioritize both your personal and professional well-being so that you can lead others from a place of balance, boundaries, and abundance. I'm Modesta Mahiga, and this is the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast, where I share insights, strategies, and guest stories that'll absolutely transform your work and life as a 360 leader. How do some leaders seem to be everywhere? They're at the top of their organizations, are in governance roles in others, and are even recognized and rewarded far beyond their markets. And how do others remain in obscurity despite their great qualifications and contributions? And why does this challenge seem to affect female leaders more than it does male? In this episode of the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast, we're going to have a rich conversation about leadership impact, why African female executives need to build Pan-African personal brands. My guest today is Thembe Khumalo. Thembe Khumalo is one of Zimbabwe's leading voices when it comes to brand building, business growth, and personal development. A winner of multiple awards, both at home and in the region, she is the founder and managing director of Brand Builder, a high-performance brand strategy firm that helps brave African leaders achieve visibility and growth through comprehensive brand strategy, creative execution, and online content strategies. Known for her clarity and courage, Thembe has developed a model for helping leaders uncover their personal power through personal brand coaching. A prolific writer and compelling speaker, she uses these gifts to help African leaders see themselves more clearly and elevate their personal narratives. Thembe, welcome to the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast.
What a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thembe, what is your story behind building Brand Builder?
It's actually a funny story.
The best kind.
I started Brand Builder in the ashes of a failed business. I had a passion project that tanked after 6 months, and I found myself having run out of the money that I had taken from an angel investor, not made many sales, and really feeling quite despondent about my capacity as a person in business. My kind of lowest point came where I had this much money in my hand, and I said to myself, should I buy toilet paper or should I put fuel in the car?
Wow.
Because I couldn't afford to do both. But at that point, I then started to look for a job. And for some reason, I couldn't get a job. And this happens often when you leave corporate and you become an entrepreneur. Getting back into corporate can be very, very difficult. And a company that had interviewed me rigorously, including psychometric evaluations and, urine tests and all kinds of crazy things, then decided they weren't going to employ me. But they said they still liked my work and they could take me on as a consultant. And so that became my first client for Brand Builder. And as they gave me more work and the clients expanded and our profile grew, Brand Builder was born.
Oh, what a story. What a beginning.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to know why brand building in particular? Why is that a niche you've carved out for yourself? And even further into your niche, personal branding. Why have you chosen to focus in that area?
Well, I started my career as a TV presenter.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. I worked for the national station, and then I worked for an independent station, and then I went into advertising, and I spent many, many years in different ad agencies,
Mhm.
all the big agencies that, with a global footprint. And so that's when I got to learn about brands and the importance of branding and how brands worked and how to develop brand strategy and so on. So when I was now stuck without a job and without an income, I basically said, what do I have in my hands? I had no
Mm.
money, I had no opportunities, but all I had was my knowledge of branding. So that's what I went with. It took me a good 6 to 9 months, I would say, to settle on the name and the ethos and the niche and the offer, I suppose, of Brand Builder. I knew that I didn't want to grow an ad agency because I didn't like the posture that agencies took towards particularly small businesses. I felt that
Mhm.
small businesses, especially in Africa, deserved more respect, more support, more of the kind of strategy that big clients and blue chips get. But
Mhm.
they couldn't afford it, and ad agencies didn't take them seriously. So I picked SMEs as my niche specifically because I wanted to give them that support because I thought they were worth it. There's more of them than there are big blue chip companies. And I wanted to show ad agencies how a client is supposed to be treated. And I thought
Oh,
if I
wow.
worked with SMEs, they would be, their owner. Usually you're dealing with the owner.
Mm.
So if you're in an owner run situation, it's quicker decision making. It's you're talking directly with the person who is most invested in the success of the business. So
Mhm.
he's actually going to listen and take your advice seriously. So that's why I picked that particular space in the market. And then because I had been building my own brand as a TV presenter, I found that people wanted that kind of advice. So people who were entrepreneurs, um, their personal brands were very closely linked with the brands of their businesses.
Yes.
So I'm sure you can imagine with any SME, usually the owner's brand and the business brand are very closely linked. And that if the owner had more confidence and more clarity about their personal brand, it would
Mhm.
become much easier for us to build the business brand and they would know how to navigate the brand space. So I kind of inadvertently started to help business owners with their personal branding based on my own experiential knowledge of having managed and grown my own brand from when I worked in television. As the demand grew, I then took a life strategies certification so that I would be able to actually coach with some degree of professionalism the clients that were coming my way.
This is phenomenal. Thembe, I love how you're showing us how things have built up. You worked with what you had in your hand, you said,
Mm,
the experience you had before, and continue to refine and articulate and create an offer around that. Now, somebody listening
mm,
to you, oh, this sounds amazing, especially I'm sure the SME founders or owners at the moment are thinking, I want to learn more about how my personal brand and my business brand are linked. I want to zero in on personal branding. It's a
mm,
buzzword we're hearing more and more these days. What is personal branding and just how important is it to growing leadership, influence, and business influence for that matter?
mm. A clear and compelling personal brand is one of the most important and valuable assets that you can
Mm.
leverage to advance your career, your business, or any project that you are passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And your brand is essentially your story. It's the story of what you bring to the world, why you
Mm-hmm.
matter, and how you can solve problems in a way that is unique to you. Because remember, the greatest value that branding brings is differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
So, my job as a personal branding coach is to help you tell your story intentionally, to
Mm-hmm.
identify the best and most relevant part of your story for the people you want to influence and the goals you want to achieve. Um, your brand is about how you show up in the world. Because in a competitive world, people are going to choose the options that they know, like, and trust. If they don't
Mm-hmm.
know you, how can they like you?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't like you, how will they trust you?
That's right.
So, telling stories about your achievements, your skills, your contributions, and your aspirations helps people to get to know you better and helps them to like you and helps them to trust you and ultimately to choose you. And it's not something that we preserve for the workplace. People are choosing and unchoosing you for all kinds of things, for friendship, for relationships, for
Mm-hmm.
marriage. There's thousands of women in the world, but somebody picked Modesta, somebody picked Thembe, somebody picked Angela for a
Mm-hmm.
reason, because for that reason, Angela stood out among all the other women in the world. And he thought, I'll choose her.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about personal branding, it's not just a tool for work, it's a tool for life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Tembi, so powerful. This isn't then just about positioning for something. This is really a lifestyle adaptation, a life ethos adaptation.
Mm.
Per-
And like
Branding.
all communication, you craft your communication according to your audience.
Mm,
If you have a Bible story, the way you're going to tell it to 3-year-olds is very
mm,
different from the way you're going to tell it to teenagers. If you're telling it to people who are unbelievers, it's very different from telling it to people who are already in the church. So it, it is a life story, but you decide which audience you're talking to at any particular time, and you know which points to raise in your story for that particular audience because those points are relevant to them and they're interested in them.
oh, Tembi, this is so rich. This is so powerful. I'd like to now take this conversation exactly where you are to African women executive, African female executives. Why have you chosen to support them in particular to build Pan African personal brands? Is it a question of you're not owning your story, you're not telling your story? Why did you feel that they would truly benefit from your offer in personal branding?
A couple of reasons, Modesta. The
Mm.
first one is I love to support the underdog.
Oh, I love that. Oh, you open both. Tell me more about that.
um, as a woman in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
as an African woman in business, you
Mm,
already have the odds stacked against you.
mm,
In fact, just as an African woman.
mm, mm,
When people talk about, oh, we're doing this for underprivileged women,
mm,
I want to say every woman is underprivileged in a patriarchal society, right?
mm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to help people who are in a place where they can do more and be more, but
Mm,
they just don't have the tools. So if you have the odds stacked against you and you don't have the tools to get ahead, then you need somebody to give you a leg up. And I
mm,
can
mm,
do that with the work that I do. And I can help you do that for yourself by making you more conscious of the issues that might be standing in your way, or the
Mm.
issues that could help you leap forward and maybe overcome some hurdles. So, not everyone has the same issues or the same priorities. Um, and helping women develop their personal brands means that they can choose the elements in themselves and in their personal stories that they want to highlight. For a long time, I worked in the media for a newspaper group, actually. And one of the things that frustrated me as a columnist was how difficult I found it to get women to comment, to get women to agree to be expert opinions, when you're doing a story.
Mm.
And it would always be, well, I'm a very private person, or, um, I don't like publicity. And it's a shame, because what that does is it makes us raise our children in a world where men are the experts, men are the people with opinions, men are the people in high profile jobs that they see.
Mm.
And what I wanted was to give my kids, who are both girls, the
Mhm.
opportunity to see women um, doing things that I know they can do. But because they're not profiled, few other people know that they can do. What can you
Mm.
do with a PhD in animal nutrition? Oh, you can
Mm.
run an NGO. Like, you don't have to work on a farm.
Mm.
Um, there are women who are doing amazing, incredible things all across the continent whose stories are going untold. Not because there's no one to tell them, but because the women haven't developed the confidence or the skills to put their stories across. Um, and that frustrated me. So I needed to develop some solutions for that situation.
Thembe, this is when I listen to you, I then realize by choosing not to tell their stories and not to contribute, that actually then just perpetuates gender discrimination, and
Mm.
that
Because
robs
it's
the world of
actually
role models
it's
of what
not
women.
about you. It's
Yeah,
about all the other women that are going to hear your story and be
yeah,
encouraged by it and be inspired by it and be
yeah,
motivated by it and be able to dream new dreams that they didn't know were possible until they'd heard your
yeah.
story, your particular story.
Wow. Because you cannot be what you cannot see, right? You'll never aspire for something that
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
cannot think that somebody like you can. And this is how we pull down that patriarchal structure. That there's no question that women can. They're examples of women doing, and so
Mm,
um, when women step up and open up and share a lot more, not that others would want to be like them, but a lot more realize that they too, can be all that they want to be,
mm, mm.
and be an example in the world.
And
I
courage comes before confidence. So when
mm,
women would say, but I'm not confident like you, I can't
mm,
get up and, talk to people. And I'd say, but you have to be brave enough first. It's through
mm.
courage that we become confident, not the other way around.
Oh, oh, that's a whole revelation unto itself, because people wait to feel, right? To feel, and not just to feel confident. I'm sure you've had examples where people say, "Well, I'm not ready. There's a stage in my career, in my life. There's certain things I want to
Yeah,
tell."
yeah.
Speak a little about that, about the things we think we need um, beforehand to feel confident. When what you're saying, it's the courage that comes first.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure you have heard um, these statistics about how if a man, has 80% of what's needed for a job, he'll apply and he'll apply confidently. a woman with 99%, even 100% of the
mm,
requirements for a job will still think, but maybe I'm not good enough.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we set our own bars too high, and we fear pain, we fear loss, we fear embarrassment,
Mm,
in ways that really hold us back. And if you think about it, I always hear this from women. Oh, if I start being high profile, then when bad things happen, people will pull me down, and they'll be, um, the bad press will be so bad for me.
mm,
And yes, that's true. Bad press is bad, but it's bad for everyone. It's
mm,
also
mm,
bad for men when they have bad press.
mm,
And we read the bad press of men in the papers every day.
mm.
But they're not saying, "Oh my God, there was a bad, horrible story about me in the paper, 2 years ago. I can't make another speech."
Oh,
They
so
really
good.
not.
Tembi, you said, when you were talking about what you do, you said, I help people, uh, highlight the different aspects of their stories that they would like to share with their audiences, for whatever goals they'd like to achieve by so doing. And then you said you also help them with the skills. And I'm
Mm.
imagining that woman who's saying, "Well, I don't have confidence like you," and you say, "Look, it takes courage." How then do you help them bridge? Okay, so I have the courage, but it's in the doing that it will build confidence. How do you help them build the skills to communicate well so that brings the confidence?
A lot of skill work is about practice.
Hmm, hmm,
So that's what we do. We practice.
hmm,
So, first of all, we're going to get clarity, because
hmm,
without clarity, we're going to be telling muddled stories. And
hmm,
muddled stories are going to take away from our brand rather than enhance it. And once you
hmm,
have clarity, actually, just clarity by itself increases
hmm.
your confidence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because in your head, you actually now know your story.
Mm,
Um, and then we look at the tools, we look at the platforms, we look at, are you going to be speaking in public? What do you need to
mm,
to support you in that?
mm,
What are the presentation skills that you need? Are you going to be writing as a thought leader or an expert opinion? What are the tools that you need for that? What are the platforms? How often can you do this so that you are actually refining the skill through practice? And
mm,
like everything, it's a process. And you may write one LinkedIn article today that nobody reads, and in fact, you may write an article every week for a year,
mm.
and there's crickets. But
Yeah.
that process actually is refining your skill and your um, ability to take what comes from the audience, to deal with rejection, to be more courageous, because you're
Mm.
realizing, oh, actually, nobody read my story, but I didn't die.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Like,
can be.
nothing very bad is happening here, actually.
Mm,
I'm
mm,
okay.
mm.
Yeah.
Tammy, can you think of a client, a woman client that you've worked with that really was reluctant at the beginning? That
Mm.
either I don't have much to share, or I really don't want to put myself out there. That you ultimately help to do that, and what the outcome is, not just the outcome publicly, but within her, after having gone through that process with you.
You know, with all my woman clients, by the
Mm,
time they come to us,
mm,
they already recognize and believe that
mm.
this process can help them.
Good.
So they seldom come if they're reluctant, is what I'm saying.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
but for example, I can I will call her, let's see,
Mm-hmm.
Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
So Annabelle she'd just come back from the States. She
Mm-hmm.
was starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the arts sector,
Mm-hmm.
so quite very creative and very different from what was available locally.
Mm-hmm.
And she was really struggling to assimilate culturally, socially, to get her business on track
Mm-hmm.
and to communicate with her audiences
Mm-hmm.
because she'd been away for a while
Mm-hmm.
and she just couldn't get a handle on this market, local
Mm-hmm.
market.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we started with, as always, was purpose. What is the purpose of this business? And what is your purpose as a human being?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you doing this? What problem are you solving with this business? And those are questions that can be difficult to respond to if you're an artist, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're selling food, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So it was quite a lot of intense coaching sessions, a lot
Mm-hmm.
of tears,
Mm-hmm.
even some kind of moments where she was ready to give up, because it is hard also to really look at yourself and see yourself clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to make peace with what you say you are and what you now realize you are, and how you come across.
Ooh, Thembe, wait, wait. So there could be an entire notion of ourselves that we have, but then held
Mm,
up, you know, against, how hold a mirror against of what
mm,
others may see you. You all of a sudden see, wait a second, I thought I was this, I stood by these values, and this is how I show up, but this is
mm.
what I'm actually putting out there.
Yeah, we have an exercise we do right in the beginning of our discovery process,
Mm,
where we do several things. We'll do a personality test and a couple of other things. But one of the
mm,
exercises we do is to say, ask 5 people to describe you in just 3 words.
yeah.
And these are people from different areas of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you pull those words together and you
Mm,
see which words come up most frequently.
mm. That's
And
telling.
for most people, there will be some very clear, obvious, descriptors there.
Mm,
And
wow.
sometimes you don't like what they are,
Mm,
and or you're surprised because you didn't realize that this was how you came across. Remember,
mm.
your brand is about how you show up in the world. And now
Yes.
you're like, oh, is this how I'm showing up?
Yeah.
Is this how people are experiencing me?
Mm. Could this be why I'm not getting ahead when I thought I
Mm,
had the questions and the
mm.
experience, and I have the integrity? Because I think that's a big one for women. Look, I'm a person of integrity, but there could be something else.
Yeah, and
Wow.
every decision you make, every decision that communicates, whether it's your clothing or your social media
Mm,
or even your associations online and offline,
mm,
every decision you make either subtracts from
mhm.
or adds to the perceived value you bring.
Wow.
So you're out there choosing choices, making decisions, but each decision is, if your decisions are not aligned, then each decision is subtracting from the last decision you made.
Wow. Wow.
So you're really just treading water. You're standing still. You're not moving forward. But if your choices are aligned to where you say you're going, to your destination, to your goal, then each decision builds on the one you made yesterday and builds on the one you made before that one and builds and builds and builds, and then you're making progress.
Tempe, I think this can be an awakening for a lot of people. And I'm so grateful your process is, let's gain the clarity, and
Mm,
let's then uh, adopt whether it's going to be the behaviors, right, that will then align with what you're now very
mm,
clear about who you
mm,
are and where you want to go. So tell me, we spoke about, was it Annabelle? What then
yes.
became Annabelle's outcome?
So eventually Annabelle got it right, hey? She and this
Wow.
happens for a lot of clients. She had to drop a lot of things. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another thing that's hard for women because you don't want to say no, whether it's to
Wow.
people or to things or to commitments you've made. But it's very
Mhm.
difficult to get clarity and to act on that clarity without saying no to some things.
Yes. That's a
You
whole
know,
podcast
by
episode for you.
indeed, indeed, it is. When you say yes to yourself and to your primary obligations,
Mm,
you are inadvertently saying no to several other things. But if you're trying to say yes to all of them, you're going to end up with a problem. So, just by the act of dropping some of her activities, some of
mm,
the things she was involved in, she
mhm,
created mind space and she
mhm,
created creative space and she
mhm.
created space in her business
Yes.
to develop products that people wanted, not just
Mhm.
products that made her feel good as an artist.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah,
That's
and
wow.
actually start to run a business rather than be an artist as a hobby.
My goodness. Maybe that's another
Because if
episode.
you're making things and there are no customers, you don't have a business, you have a hobby.
And so I'm taking this back to personal branding. It could
Mm,
be that you're a person with certain intentions and you're going out there to do things, but you're doing them for yourself and not realizing that personal branding really is positioning so that those you're looking to influence or
mm,
transact with
mm.
see something of value to them in you, such that they will
Exactly.
reach out to you. And
Yes,
many of us are doing our own thing for ourselves and wondering why others aren't receptive to it.
yes, that's true. But it also means, again, that's saying no peace. It means you have to make peace with the fact that the products you're creating may not be for everyone. In fact, no product is for everyone.
Yeah.
So your job now is to find the audience that resonates with the things that you are inspired to create.
Mm, I
And then
get that.
find the right ways to communicate with those audiences in the platforms where they are, not the
Hmm.
platforms that you like necessarily, but the
Wow.
platforms where they can be found so that you
Mm,
can reach them with your messaging and your product and your story.
this is phenomenal. Now, on this point of reaching them, um, product and story. Tembi, how does the 360 leadership community reach out to you? Somebody's listening to you, they're thinking, I need personal branding services. I need to get clarity on who I am, where I'm going, and who it is I'm speaking to, where they can be found, and how to best communicate with them. How do they reach out to
Wow.
you?
So, because consistency is the bedrock of branding, I'm
Yeah.
available at Thembe Khumalo on all. So it's Thembe Khumalo, Thembe,
Hmm.
on LinkedIn, on
Hmm.
Instagram, and on Twitter. And my website is thembekhumalo.com.
Love that.
Yeah.
Tembi, thank you so very much for having made the time to join us and for really pulling out why personal branding is so important to just not just your personal and professional growth, but just as growth as a person.
What a pleasure, Modesta. Thank you for having me. And I really hope that your listeners in the community can benefit from having listened to this conversation, and that it triggers something, because it doesn't even mean that they have to work with me. It just means that they need to start being intentional about their brands. Mm.
Mm. Oh, Thembe, thank you. Thank you so very much.
Pleasure.
As always, thank you for joining us on the Modesta Mahiga 360 Leadership Podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast and share this episode to add value to another leader. Remember, you can only lead others as well as you lead yourself. If you'd like to learn more about how we can support you to lead people, organizational, and market results, connect with us on modestamahiga.com. Have a wonderful day. Bye.